Welcome back mga kabarangay sa ating PSTV 5 Plus. Ako po yung Direk Rene. Magandang gabi sa inyong lahat. Sa gabing ito, sa araw na to ay makakapanayan po natin o makakatsikahan natin ang isang kababayan natin na nasa Pilipinas. Pero once upon a time ay nandito po siya sa Aotearoa, New Zealand dahil nag-aral po siya sa Victoria University of Wellington. At without further ado, ay i-ano na natin, pasok na natin ang ating makakapanayam, ang ating makakatsikahan, si Monica Macansantos. Hi Monica, how are you?
Hi, Direk. Kumusta na kayo? I'm good. It's sunny here in chilly Baguio.
Baguio,
Nice
wow.
to
Maraming
see
tao,
you.
no? Kasi pag Holy Week, di ba? Ang daming tao dyan sa Baguio.
I
Is it
guess
still like that sa Baguio?
marami po siguro ngayon, pero because of the pandemic, tourism is only beginning to come back here.
Mm,
Uh, for the
okay.
longest time, wala masyado. I think marami siguro along Road, maraming turista right now, pero kasi when
Mm.
you're a resident of Baguio, went to stay away from downtown and all the tourist
Mm,
traps.
tama. Yeah, sure, sure. Sure.
I recently published a collection of short stories about Filipinos at home and in the diaspora, including Aotearoa, New Zealand. Um, its title is Love and Other Rituals, and it was published by Grattan Street Press at the University of Melbourne. Um, it's mostly composed of stories that I wrote while I was a Master of Fine Arts student sa University of Texas at Austin, where I was a James Michener
Mhm.
Fellow. And I wrote one story in the collection as an undergrad sa University of the Philippines, Diliman. I wrote the final story of in the collection, which is also the longest story. Its title is Leaving Auckland. I wrote that while I was a PhD student at the Victoria University of Wellington. I was doing my PhD in creative writing, and I
Mhm.
was there to write a novel about the Marcos dictatorship, and I'm still working
Mhm.
on that. Although I've already earned my PhD like 5 years
Mhm.
ago, a lifetime ago. So anyway, while I was living in New Zealand, I wanted to process my experiences as a Filipino immigrant. So
Mhm.
I wrote that long short story. And apart from short stories, I also write essays. So I've written for places like Electric Literature. In New Zealand, I've written for the Spin-off and
Mm.
Vice New Zealand and the
Mhm.
Pantograph Punch.
Mhm.
So I know these are names you may be familiar with.
Mhm.
Tsaka sa States, I've written for Literary Hub, Electric Lit, ano pa nga ba, Colorado Review, and I've also already compiled a collection of essays. So yeah, and so I consider myself a fiction writer, mainly a fiction writer, an essayist, and a novelist.
Mhm.
And I was born in Baguio in 1987. That makes me old, I guess. Pero and I we lived here until I turned 3. I was old or young enough to witness the Baguio earthquake, which is
Ah,
interesting. And
1991. Yes. Uh-huh. Mhm.
1990 po, I have
1990. Yeah. Mhm.
opo, so I'm right now I'm in my in our ancestral home, and I clearly remember sitting in front of the TV watching
Mhm.
Batibot, and then all these books in our living room started raining down on me.
Mhm.
That's like a very distinct memory from my childhood. And then my mom snatched me up and takbuhan na kami pababa.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I think my family carried some of that trauma with them when we moved to the United States in 1990, where my mom held a Fulbright or was awarded a Fulbright fellowship to do her PhD in mathematics at the University of
Mhm.
Delaware. So I spent 5 years of my childhood in Delaware, and it's also the setting of the first story in my collection entitled The
Mhm.
Autumn Sun. It's about Filipinos in Delaware, and I think a
Mm.
lot of Filipinos don't, or a lot of people in general don't really hear of Delaware that much, except
Mhm.
when they're talking about Joe Biden, who's from Wilmington. And so, yeah, so after that, when I was 8 and a half, we returned to Baguio when my mom finished her PhD in math. Tapos bumalik po siya sa UP Baguio kung saan siya nagturo ng matematika, and then later on naging chancellor siya ng UP Baguio.
Mm. Mhm.
And so my mom um is primarily a mathematician. My dad he's the writer in our family. Although my mom is a writer too. She
Mhm.
put out her first collection of essays 2 years ago in 2021. And this year it was nominated for the National Book Award in the Philippines.
Wow.
Yung
Oh,
title po ay
nice.
Departures.
Mm.
Departures
Mhm.
essays published by UP Press.
Mm.
So if you're
Mhm.
interested in that, you should look that up.
Yeah,
And pero
sure, sure.
anyway, back to my dad. My dad was a there were times when he was a full-time writer. He was a poet and an
Mhm.
essayist, and siya yung he took his craft very seriously, and hindi po siya yung tipong may mga artist and writer parents kasi na 'pag nakita nila yung anak nila yung parang
Mm.
sasabihin nila, "Go away, you're disturbing my flow,
Oh,
pero
okay.
hindi po siya yeah, pero hindi po siya gano'n, sa akin. He parang welcomed me into his world by,
Mhm.
well, reading the poems he was writing to me, and he also showed me the books he liked. We had a lot of books at home,
Mhm.
so I grew up in that environment. So it's not that writing came easily for me, because writing is I still consider it, well, an exercise in will,
Mhm.
kasi you really have to put yourself
Yes, that's
in
right.
that, like,
Mhm.
frame of mind. You really have to take it seriously if you want to be if you really want to
Tama.
be productive as a writer. So pero it's something that I saw was a possibility in my life. So it's
Mhm.
something I naturally gravitated towards, if you could put it that way. And so I started writing poems and short stories in elementary and high school. And then
Mhm.
in college, nung nag-aral po ako sa UP Diliman, nag-major po ako in English and creative writing. And that was fun. Yeah, it was interesting. Yung mga mentors ko po ay sila Butch Dalisay, Charleston Ong.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
Um, I also had Chingdi Cruz as a poetry teacher. Sir Emil Flores was my thesis advisor. All of them very encouraging and nurturing. And then pagkatapos po nun, I also did some creative writing workshops during the summertime. So naging fellow po ako sa, oh my God, but why am I thinking about this? Ano, sa Siliman Writers Workshop, which
Ah,
is like
okay.
very famous summer
Mm.
writing workshop founded by the
Mhm.
Tiempo couple in Dumaguete.
Mhm.
I was a fellow for poetry in 2004. For the longest time, I considered myself a poet primarily, and it was during Butch Dalisay's class that I started thinking of pursuing fiction seriously, more seriously
Mhm.
than I previously did.
Mhm.
And also Iligan Writers Workshop po din ako in 2006.
Mhm.
which was also another interesting experience kasi sa Mindanao po. Tapos yung tatay ko galing Mindanao, galing po siyang Zamboanga. So it was interesting to see the literary scene in Mindanao, which often gets written off by the very Manila-centric Philippine
Mhm.
literary scene.
Mhm.
So yeah, this is something I've been doing full time since for as long as I remember. Tapos, so I after graduating college, I taught for 3 years at the University of the Philippines, Los Baños, which was also another interesting experience. I met all sorts of characters there, made some lifelong friends. But when I eventually felt like moving on, so nag-apply po ako sa iilang mga MFA programs sa Amerika. Ang MFA or the Master of Fine Arts degree ay tinuturing na terminal degree for creative writing in the States, meaning para na rin siyang PhD. The only reason why I did the
Hmm.
PhD in New Zealand was that I just needed more time to write and to grow as a writer. Pero I wanted to do that first, the MFA. So, nag-apply ako sa mga iilang MFA programs sa Amerika. Tapos, natanggap ako sa James Michener Center for Writers sa University of Texas at Austin.
Mhm.
And then, siguro that opened so many doors for me. I had the best 3 years of my life doon sa Austin, Texas. Although like yung sa New Zealand, that was like a whole not another like
A
very
different
interesting
ano,
and rich yeah, very interesting and rich experience. Like they're two
mhm,
very different places. Like Austin is, you know how Texas is. It's like so hot, it's so dry, and
mhm,
although conservative ang culture ng Texas, ang Austin is like that little blue dot in the sea of
mhm,
red. Although hindi lang
mhm,
po ang Austin, ang Houston tsaka Dallas and San Antonio are also quite liberal, and El Paso pala. And it's huge. And
mhm.
you know what they say about Texas, everything's bigger and
Bigger
don't
the
mess with Texas. Tapos pagdating ko sa New Zealand, it was all about being humble and like parang may konting there's something about New Zealand na yung
mhm.
I'm not sure if you'd call it the Kiwi cringe, pero yung parang, oh, New Zealand, nobody knows about us, and why are you here? Parang may, ewan ko if, yeah, my sense of humility, like, and then yung parang you can't, and then there's also that tall poppy syndrome, which is
Oh, yeah,
also
that
quite funny na hindi ka
mhm,
pwedeng magbuhat ng sariling bangko. Pero anyway, back to Texas, that was really interesting kasi parang ito ako galing sa Pilipinas, tapos I wasn't quite sure if I had earned my place there. Tapos yung mga
mhm,
kaklase ko, lahat sila magagaling eh. Tapos mga iba nag-undergrad sa mga Ivy League or sa mga ano famous universities in America. So parang there was a lot of insecurity there. And then I was talking lately to one of my classmates na Amerikano
mhm,
at puti at lalaki. I was talking lately to him for an interview, and he said that meron din siya mga insecurities going into that program kasi sabi niya, ang gagaling ninyong lahat. So parang lahat kami ganun. Tapos I was one of the two people of color in
hmm,
our class, like in the class of 2013. It was a 3-year degree program,
mhm,
and we were all awarded scholarships as
mhm,
part of the Michener program. Kasi ito pong si James Michener na isang best-selling writer,
mhm,
nag well, he decided to donate his estate to the University of Texas at Austin on
okey,
the
mhm,
condition that na gumawa po sila ng MFA program para maka-nourish na mga writers who were just starting out mostly. Tapos
mhm,
kasi sa States, if you if you want to go there on fellowship, most of the time patuturuin kayo na mga undergrad. They call it
Okay. Mhm.
TAships or teaching assistantships. Tapos sa amin, we didn't have to teach in exchange for getting free tuition and the stipend. We were just like, they just told us like, here's your money and go to your classes and write. This is what
Mm.
James Michener wanted from you. So I I owe my life as a writer to James Michener practically, and to Victoria University, of course, which also
Mhm.
generously, and well, the government of New Zealand supporting my writing through its through the PhD of in creative writing ng International Institute of Modern Letters sa
Mhm.
Victoria University. And yung advisor ko dun, si Damien Wilkins, he was a very sharp critic and very, yeah, magaling ano eh, magaling ang mga New Zealand writers at magaling naman ang scene sa New Zealand. So it was nice to
Mhm.
have to experience the best of both worlds and all three
Mhm.
worlds, like even in the
Mhm.
Philippines, like I had the fortune of studying with accomplished and generous writers. So
Mhm.
yeah, that's
Mm.
my story. Sorry po
Yeah.
kung
Yeah.
napahaba.
Hindi. Okey lang kasi it's a very interesting journey 'no, at, ngayon tatanong ako dun sa mga, bits of information. So, between your MFA and your doctorate, gaano katagal yung was it immediate after 2013 you went into your doctorate already or
Oh,
nagturo ka pa
so
sandali?
um I graduated ng May 2013. I left America in October of 2013. Tapos umuwi
Mhm.
muna ako sa Pilipinas, and then I was living off my savings and writing. In the middle of that, nagkaroon ako ng 1-month fellowship sa Hedgebrook, which is like a residency program for women writers in Washington State. So bumalik pa ako sa States. Yung
Mhm.
sa if for those who don't know, ang uh, ang America and also Europe and I think New Zealand too has what they call residency programs where mga
Hmm.
writers tapos artists, musicians are given a month or several weeks in like a place na napakatahimik. Tapos
Hmm.
iba-iba po yung setup. Sometimes they give these artists are given these fellowships for free. Sometimes they have to pay, pero you're
Hmm.
given living quarters and studio space, and if you're lucky, meals para magsulat ka lang or gumawa ka lang ng art. And
Mhm.
I've done several of these residencies sa States. So yeah, anyway, Hedgebrook is one of those many residencies sa States. Tapos it's made for women kasi ang mga babae sa society natin binibigyan ng kung ano-anong tasks. Tapos ano tayo yung kami yung tasked with raising children, and even if wala ka
Hmm.
pang anak parang ang daming kung babae ka ang daming mong mga tasks at kung ano-ano.
Mhm.
So ang Hedgebrook parang it was designed to get rid of that at least for a month or a few weeks para
Mhm.
magsulat ka lang. And you attend to
Mhm.
yourself instead of other people because like as women, like we're expected to attend to other people's needs first before our own needs. So I did that in 2014 and then I traveled around a little, and early 2015 dun na po
Mhm.
ako lumipat sa New Zealand. I was
Yung nasa
working on
Washington ka, anong
op I was working on a draft of my novel na naging PhD thesis ko sa New Zealand.
mhm. Mhm.
Ayun, tungkol
Okey,
sa
oo.
mga Marcoses, and I'm still well, it has grown over time, and because of yung challenges ng publishing industry, parang I've still had to revise it, pero it's getting there.
Mhm. So is this a novel about the Marcoses or are they
Not
named as
really about
Marcoses or paano?
um it's not really about the Marcoses, it's about more about yung mga ordinary people who lived during the dictatorship. It's
During the
about
okay.
three young people who come of age during the dictatorship. Tapos
Mhm.
they're all kasi sa mga Filipino novels napapansin ko ano yung focus talaga tungkol ano sa mga elite, sa mga
Hmm,
mayayaman at hindi
mhm,
naman after a while medyo nakakapagod ring magbasa ng
mm.
mga nobela na puro na lang mayayaman, eh
Tama.
hindi naman tayong lahat mayayaman and ano,
Mm.
yung
Yung
parating
kwento
yung,
ng ano,
oo, yung
yung
class
kwento ng
disparity
yes, oo. Kasi yung
yeah,
kwento
yung
ng
class
lower class is mas ano, mas malaman, yung mas
yun nga
makulay.
po tapos ano yung pansin ko pa, parating yung class disparity sa mga nobela tungkol sa dictatorship napakalaki. Either
Hmm,
mayaman ka or mahirap ka tapos parang
mhm,
walang in between. Eh, para sa
mm.
akin interesting din ang kwento ng masa tsaka ng middle class kasi
Yes,
especially with
correct.
the middle class kung magsulat ka tungkol sa middle class, parang ituturing kang elite, eh, hindi naman hindi na ano, like,
Mhm,
ang
mm.
mga middle class usually a generation away from poverty. Kasi parang
Correct.
yeah, the Filipino middle class is very young na
Mhm,
usually kung if you were born and raised middle class, yung parents mo galing sa hirap at
mm,
nag-struggle talaga para
mhm.
mag-provide ng
Para makapag-aral
comfortable
ka.
life for
Mm,
you. Yun nga po,
mm,
yun. So,
mm.
it's I think a subject that hasn't really been touched upon as much in
Okay.
Filipino
How how
fiction.
how
So,
how
yeah.
far are you in finishing the novel? How
So
far are you in
I
finishing the novel?
so I've written several drafts that I thought were complete and then sinasubmit ko sa mga
Mhm,
literary agents kasi gusto ko ring ma-publish
mm,
internationally and by a press that's probably bigger than the press that published my story collection. And
mm,
may mga feedback sila, like you could parang make this character more interesting. So I already always go back to the drawing board
mhm.
and revise. Like sometimes akala ko final na tapos yung pala hindi pa pala. And
Oo, work in
kasi
progress. Mm,
marami tsaka as non-Americans and non-white people, parang the bar is generally set higher for us kasi
mhm,
minsan
mm,
hindi naiintindihan yung mga kwento natin or kung minsan hindi sila nag-e-effort na intindihan ang mga kwento natin. So, sometimes it's all a matter of waiting for the right editor who will understand your work.
mhm,
Sometimes it's a matter of just waiting for the literary climate to change,
mhm,
and sometimes you just have to revise. So,
mhm.
yeah.
Monica, nung you were saying earlier about that earthquake sa Baguio, ano? So it's still vivid sa'yo. Has that come out in your writings, in your poems, in your
Oh, yeah.
essays?
So
Mhm,
yung sa the earliest story written in my debut short story collection, yung Autumn Sun, there's a lot of
mhm,
reference to the earthquake.
mhm,
Tapos may isang character who loses a close family relative in the
mhm,
earthquake. So it
mhm.
was like generally a traumatic experience for this city and the people who lived here. And like maybe years, even
Correct.
decades after that,
Mm.
people kept talking about it. Up to now, people still talk about it.
Okay, talagang nagba-buffer yung aking ano, eh. We're talking about ano yung sa Baguio ano, and I can still recall, can you hear me,
Yeah, I can hear
Monica?
you now.
Oh, I can still
Opo.
recall that when that earthquake happened, I was teaching in high school. Katatapos lang ng klase namin, it was around 3:30 I think or before 4 o'clock, and really we felt it horribly. And I can just
Nasa
imagine
Manila po
how you
kayo nun?
felt. Yes, I was teaching at Colegio San Agustin sa
Mhm.
Makati. At tapos na yung klase namin eh. So we were lounging sa faculty lounge. And ang faculty lounge namin sa basement eh. Tapos biglang ano, and we had to rush out and we could we could hear the earth throbbing eh. Kasi dalawa yung earthquake
Oh my
sabay eh.
God.
Isang left and right, tsaka isang up and down eh. Sabay yun eh. And we were praying, but we could hear the earth like tugtug, 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 tugtug. Very clearly talaga yung parang beating, no? But anyway, so you also mentioned that your dad is from Zamboanga. Kasi earlier offline we were talking about I knew
Mm-hmm.
of some
Yeah.
Macansantos when I was in my youth in Zamboanga, and yeah, I think that that made me like draw closer to you na kailangan makausap ko si Monica at nang ano malaman ko yung kwento. But also you were saying that your dad is he is the writer in the family, and although he did not really
Mm.
push you to write, but he was there to encourage you, and
Yeah.
I think yung parang papasok ka sa den niya, nagsusulat siya, tapos okay lang sa kanya, ang ano eh,
Mm-hmm.
ang sarap na ng bonding moments niyo, no? Um,
Oo nga po.
and then your mom also has just published 2 years ago a book of essays. So, do you have any other siblings, Monica?
I, yeah, I'm an only child, if you can tell.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Now, ano to, yung growing up and writing all of these things. Now, we'll go now to the book Love and Other Rituals, no? How many stories are in that book, Monica? Ilan yung kwento doon sa Love and Other Rituals?
So, walo po yung kwento sa Love
Mhm.
and Other Rituals. Medyo mahahaba po sila, pero may mga maiikli na kwento
Okay.
rin.
And one of the stories is based in New Zealand, in Auckland ba? Auckland ba yun? You were saying?
Auckland and Wellington. Actually, more Wellington, pero it's, well, siguro ano, 50-50, half in Wellington, half in Auckland.
Okay. Uh-huh.
It's told from the point of view of a Filipino man who's thinking of leaving Auckland. Kasi feeling niya, well, yung hindi niya nakokontrol ang buhay niya kasi anak siya ng mga immigrants, tapos they made the decision to move there to Auckland and to build a
Mhm.
house there, pero feeling niya as a young immigrant kid, he has to take charge of his life, and maybe that means
Mhm.
he has to leave Auckland.
Mm, mhm, mhm. And the book is available on Amazon, yun ba? It can be purchased online.
Well, there's there's there are several bookstores in Wellington that carry the book, and
Ah, okay. Mhm.
they both ship around across the country, across New
Mhm.
Zealand. So yung lately I did a book launch with Good Books Wellington, and
Mhm.
they carry my book Love and Other Rituals. It's slightly cheaper than the other bookstore that carries my book, which is Unity.
Ah,
And
okay. Sa Unity meron.
yeah, meron din po sa Unity. Tapos sa Good Books, if you live in Wellington, they ship for free.
Within
Tapos it's
Wellington.
also, opo, inside Wellington. And then apart from that, if kunwari ayaw, yung you're wondering why should I put down money for this person's book,
Hmm.
it's also available in several libraries in New Zealand. So sa
Libraries.
Auckland, andun siya, sa Hamilton, sa Wellington, tapos
Mm.
sa Christchurch and several other major cities in Wellington. So Rotorua, Palmerston North recently
Mhm.
ordered copies.
Mhm.
Dunedin, I don't like I'm not really keeping track anymore. Pero
Mhm.
in case you want to read my book for free, you should check your local public library. And if they don't have it yet, you can ask them to order it for you.
Mhm.
Yeah.
How about in the Philippines, sa mga bookstores natin, sa mga
Um, sa
university
fully book po,
libraries, wala ng ibang bookstores na ano?
fully booked, but like one of my
Yes.
friends requested it from Power Books, so they might have it. Ayun, yung
Hmm,
dalawa po, basta check po yung dalawang yun,
mhm.
fully booked tsaka Power Books.
Pero wala sa mga
Tsaka, well,
universities, colleges yung ano, yung book?
kasi I'm waiting for them to order it eh, at alam nyo naman po sa Pilipinas, napaka-bureaucratic. And
Okay, oo.
oo,
So the
so
ordering
it's
comes from Australia, yun ba yun? Comes from
yeah,
Australia yung books?
either
Oh,
Australia or the US kasi ang publisher ko works through Ingram, which is a printer and distributor. And apart from
mm.
Australia, the other big Ingram printer is in the US. So kunwari ang fully book
Ah.
gets my book from the US.
Now,
Yeah.
as a writer, Monica, meron ka bang mga rituals? Meron ka bang parang pamahiin, yung parang gano'n na may magic ba na kailangan mong
Um
gawin when you're writing? Or it just comes whenever you
well,
like to write?
parang I've learned through the years that if you depend on rituals to make you creative and they don't work, then
Hmm.
mahirap naman. Yeah, it's you really have to just depend on yourself for that. I these days I
Mhm.
try to write in the mornings. Yung
Okay.
parang it's just all about sitting down, opening up your computer. If there's any ritual that I follow, it's to switch off the internet. So I have some apps for that. Yung
Mhm.
dati gumagamit ako ng freedom, pero nung hindi na siya free, gumagamit ako ng self-control. So parang you can set parang how many minutes or hours your like your internet switches off on your computer.
Mhm. Mhm.
And also you can parang deny yourself access to certain websites na nakaka-addict para sa'yo at nakaka-distract from writing.
Mhm.
So, kung nakaka-distract ang Facebook, yun is usually yung pinaka-distracting for
Mhm.
a lot of
Mhm.
people. Pwede mong patayin yun, tsaka YouTube, tsaka Twitter. Yung
Mhm.
Twitter sa akin parang mas distracting pa kaysa Facebook.
Mhm.
So, ayun, yun yung pinaka-ritual ko. Tapos,
Mhm.
parang, well, I think that writing is like, well, it's like well, not, this is a bad analogy, pero it's not, well, in the sense you're an athlete, so keep yourself healthy, s- get enough sleep. Ito
Mhm.
yung, ano,
Mhm.
the usual for me. If I'm getting enough sleep, eating well, taking care of myself, exercising, that's when the writing flows. Kasi kung minsan masyadong nire-romanticize especially para sa
Mhm.
mga Filipino na ano, ang drinking, ang smoking kasi ang mga writers ano,
Mhm.
parang they don't take care of themselves and I I don't that it doesn't work that way. Na I've noticed that if you're not taking care of yourself, your writing also suffers
Mhm.
kasi this is an organ and
Mhm.
you have to nourish this and it's part of your
Yeah.
body
Mhm.
too. Like everything goes into your writing. So, yeah.
Meron ka bang ano, meron ka bang limit? Halimbawa, I need to write 500, 1,000 words for the day, parang gano'n or wala, depende?
Um, it depende po. So right now, I am revising my novel for the millionth time, and
Mhm.
there were times when I was generating new pages. So sometimes, yung napapansin ko, if I'm kind to myself and I give myself a word goal of 500 words, nasusurpass ko
Mm.
yun. Pero if I set
Mhm.
the bar too high, kuminsan dun pa ako hindi productive. So,
Okay.
parang
Mm.
I think that by being kind to yourself, you allow yourself to be more productive, if that makes any
Mm.
sense. Pero syempre kung nag-e-edit ako, iba naman yun. Parang you're not naman, it's not about producing words anymore, but parang cleaning things up, tightening the writing, cutting out a lot of those words that you aim to write. Yeah, and then there
Me
are days
ah,
naman, oh, sorry.
no, no, go ahead, go ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
Yeah,
There are days
and you don't have to like, well, there's periods of time like kunwari kung nasa residency ako like last September nasa Alaska ako for another residency sa Story Knife Writers Retreat. Like I set the bar a little higher for myself. Like gusto ko 1,000 words a day. Tapos gusto ko
Mhm.
magsusulat ako every day. Pero hindi naman necessary na parati kang ganun. Like there are
Mm.
periods of time when you should just rest your mind kasi kailangan mo rin naman ng rest.
Okay, yeah,
And
uh-huh.
yeah, and also reading is essential too. Like
Mhm.
people often forget when when they ask writers for advice that you should also read and read a lot,
Mhm.
and that's part of the
Mhm.
work.
Mhm. Monica, kasi you are now a published author, no? Yung
Hmm.
iba kasi, what they do is with the technology now is they self-publish, no? Yung mga first time, ano, so they self-publish
Yeah.
and they when they make it and then they go, maybe some company will pick them up, ano? Is it also like, but in your case, ano ka na, yung established author ka na, so you don't have to go that way or pwede ring bigla
Pwede rin
nawawala?
po. It
Yeah.
well, it really depends on your goals. Like
Mhm.
kunwari sa akin kasi nung dumaan ako sa MFA tsaka PhD programs, hindi ina-advise sa amin ang self-publishing. Yung nire-recommend
Hmm.
sa amin mag-publish ng mga shorter works sa mga
Mhm.
literary journals, sa magazines to build a profile. And that way, without publishing a book yet, you're already reaching an audience. You're already building a platform for yourself. And
Okay.
I found that like while um, promoting this book, the connections that I formed while publishing and also while attending residencies, conferences, all of those helped me promote my work.
Mhm.
Yung this isn't, I'm not saying that self-publishing is like, nah,
Mm.
don't
Yeah,
ever
yeah.
do that,
Mhm.
no? Pero
Mhm.
yung napapansin ko sa mga self-published authors is that sometimes they don't have those prior publications in journals and magazines, and
Okay.
they don't have those contacts. So
Mhm.
pagdating na sa promotion, hindi nila alam kung saan sila lalapit for a
Hmm.
review, for an
Mhm.
interview, for like a podcast like this. Yung parang
Mm.
they're not as well networked. So well, the book is there and you like your friends and family will know about it,
Mhm.
pero para sa akin kasi like, and that's fine, like if that's your goal,
Mhm.
then that's completely valid. Pero if you're someone like me who wants to build
Yeah.
an audience beyond their immediate circles, then it's not something that I would recommend. And but although sometimes kasi ang mahirap po talagang ma-publish traditionally, so I do understand why people
Mhm.
would go that route. It's just that it's like in terms of promotion, like for instance for printing, you spend for all of that. And for ano pagdating
Yes.
sa promotion, there are a lot of legitimate review outlets will not review a self-published book. So Radio
Mhm.
New Zealand, for instance, which reviewed my book, would not review a self-published book. So these are things to consider.
Mhm.
Although, if you want to go that path, it's like completely up to you, and it's
Mhm.
fine.
Now, let's talk about Butch Dalisay, who doesn't want to be known as Professor or Dr. Dalisay, basta si Butch lang siya, no? I love what he's writing. I follow his column, nasa Philippine Star, yung Pen Manila, yung mga ganon. And he has this knack of fiction nga siya, pero ano yung ibang klase yung ano, yung
Mm-hmm.
the way he mixes it, the fiction and the reality, you know. How was he when he was your professor? And I'm sure you keep in contact with him.
He recently friended me on Facebook, and that was out of the blue. sort of out of the blue, pero sige na lang. So magaling siya na I mean the reason why I decided to become a fiction writer was because of him kasi yung maganda sa kanya, he's very interested in language and
Mhm.
like the parang he's very interested in words and how that captures reality, and he's just very like as a writer he's intellectually curious, so he
Mhm.
reads a lot, and he
Mm.
dahil siguro for us Filipino writers, when we work in English, it's usually we usually come to it as our second language, and because of that,
Oh, yes.
we're more we're I think we're more attentive to its
Mm.
to the what to what it's capable of doing for
Mhm.
us.
Mhm.
Naalala ko po si Joseph Conrad na who learned English in his 20s,
Mhm.
whose whose second language was English, and then he went on to write Heart of Darkness, which is considered one of the most well stylistically accomplished books in the
Mhm.
English language, right? So like he's known as a stylist. Pero tapos kung minsan po when you're working in English as a second language fiction writer of English,
Mm.
you're more attentive to it in general. Tapos dun, yun po yung nakita ko kay Butch Dalisay. And ano siya, he knows who he is, and and he's very confident in himself,
Mhm.
which is
Mhm.
why sa classroom parang he is the Lord. He like parang siya yung he talks to us like parang siya yung nasa pedestal tapos kami mga
Mm.
disipulo niya. And for
Disipulo.
some people may not react to that positively, pero
Mm.
I felt that he was also when he read our stories, he was also listening to us.
Mhm.
Hindi siya yung tipong prescriptive na mentor where ano parang meron siyang set idea of how you should write tapos
Mhm.
i-impose niya sa'yo, yun. Parang he
Mhm.
would read our works and then listen to what we were trying to do tapos he tried to bring out the best in
Mhm.
us. Like
Mhm.
he would
Mhm.
identify what our strengths were tapos parang so in that
Mhm.
sense very nurturing siya. Even if
Mhm.
at first parang yung dahil ano ba, he's very confident in himself.
Mhm.
Some people might not react to that positively, but
Mhm.
I think that once you take away that facade, you will
Mhm.
discover this very kind man.
Mhm. Now, Monica, writing entails a lot of research, 'di ba? Yung primary research, yung interviews or what have you, to really get everything, no? Kahit na fiction yung ginagawa mo is you
Mhm.
go to the process of doing a lot of research, and I think even up to now while you're revising, ginagawa mo pa rin yun, ano? What's your like how do you do like what's your technique in research? You put it into notes, into index cards, or paano yung style mo?
Um, I don't know. It also depends on my material and whether it has to be research heavy. So, kunwari yung sa short story collection ko, I considered the writing to be an act of research in itself, if that makes any sense.
Okay.
In that, I would write in order to understand why this character was behaving in this way or kung ano yung saan yung pinanggalingan niya. And then the writing would lead me towards those questions that I would ask and then have answers for through research, like through books, through like reading other stories similar to the stories I was trying to write. Depende po, like, kunwari yung sa Marcos dictatorship novel ko, because it's a historical novel and I was born in 1987, that entailed more book research and note taking. I'm very disorganized as a researcher, and you probably shouldn't follow my advice at all. I just write things down in a notebook, and I just
Mhm.
Xerox things, and then keep the books that
Mhm.
I need to reference. Tapos if I need to refresh my mind, then I'll go back to them. And well, the thing is that parang yung mga hahanap ko sa research ko, I they don't necessarily directly make themselves their way into my work.
Into
What
your book.
usually
Okay.
happens is parang since I write fiction, parang there'll be a detail that will stand stand out to me. Like
Mhm.
kunwari ano, binabasa ko yung guerrilla warfare ni Che Guevara, tapos yung how they set
Mhm.
up cots para ano
Mhm.
matulog in the forest kasi you're not
Mhm.
sabi niya you're not
Mhm.
supposed to lay down your sack on the ground kasi pagpipiestahan ka ng mga langgam. So sabi ko, oh,
Mhm.
that's interesting. Tapos yung parang
Mhm.
yung, sabi niya, we string our mats between trees. So, tapos binabasa ko yung memoir ng mga Kimpo na I'm not sure if I got it from from their memoir, pero to set yung mga NPA kung magse-set up ng kama for the night, may mga pegs sila na
Gano'n
you
din.
stick those into the ground tapos you string
Hmm.
the bed between those pegs. So sabi ko, that's interesting.
Mhm.
And then parang there's a story that can come out of that. So parang I
Mhm.
see research more as parang inspiration for me rather
Mhm.
than parang hindi naman parang osmosis yan na
Yeah. Oo.
i-echo
Mhm.
ko yung nasulat na. Parang it's more like a conversation if that makes any sense.
What's your take on microfiction? No, writing stories of 100, 300, 500 words. What's your
Mm-hmm.
take on that?
I I don't like the only the closest attempt I've made at that was a flash essay
Mhm.
about well set in Aotearoa, set in Eastburn sa ano sa Days Bay, and parang just impressions. That was a fun experience. Para siyang close to like if you're good at it, para it approaches poetry, parang you choose like details or actions or movements that speak for something bigger,
Mhm.
and it can like if you do it well, it's really good. If it's done badly, then well, people do everything badly, so you can
Okay.
do
So,
anything badly and you can do anything well.
what's your like, uh, well, let's just say advice. What's your advice for budding writers who, what, yeah, what can you tell like
Mm.
people who are going into writing?
I'd also like to note that this can span all ages, so you don't need to be young in order to be a budding writer. You can be in
Mhm.
your 60s and or your 70s and you want to write down your experiences, and you just go for it. If you're yeah, there you can
Mhm.
write at any age. That's one. And
Mhm.
also read a lot, and that's how I found my voice early on as a writer, by reading a lot and discovering the authors who spoke to me, because these were authors who were doing things that the type kind of work that I wanted to do. So,
Mhm.
kunwari, si Gregorio Brillantes na discover ko in college, and yeah, and these are writers who will bring out uh, the things that you want to do as a writer, like si Karima Polotan for me.
Mhm.
Sino pa? My father, whose poetry continues to be an inspiration for me. Si Alice Munro, si Mia Alvar, Filipino-American writer. Si Mary Gateskill, kasi yung gusto ko kay Mary Gateskill, she writes about yung mga marginalized characters, yung mga sex workers, and
Mhm.
people we don't like, people we don't think have well impactful stories of
Mhm.
their own.
Mhm.
So yeah, like just well, my point is like just read a lot, and then also find your community, na parang
Mhm.
this is, well, it's a solitary endeavor ang pagsusulat, but I think that the people I met along the way, the friends I made, and the community I created around me helped me keep going. So seek your seek your family, like find people siguro sa mga public library kung nasan Aotearoa kayo, sa kung minsan may mga meetup groups, tapos may mga ang
Mm.
mga universities kung minsan merong mga like may adult education courses. So siguro I'm not sure kung ang University of Auckland offers creative writing courses for yung mga hindi enrolled sa program nila. Pero ang
Mhm.
Victoria did for the longest time. So look for those, and then eventually you find friends,
Mhm.
and then parang kung gusto niyo mag master's degree in creative writing, that's another way of finding your community. Pero my observation is that most cities, especially in a very developed country like New Zealand, have writing groups, so you could join those.
Mhm. And finally, Monica, so you have love and other ritual of what if one of the stories get picked up by, meaning turn it into a film, a short film, or put it into screen? What's your like? Will you be amenable to that?
Oh,
Kasi
that's every
diaspora, eh, maganda
writer's
yan eh.
that's every writer's dream, 'di ba?
Ah, ganun ba?
I think
Okay.
that oo, as long as I can have some input into the writing of the script. Kasi kung
Mhm.
minsan parang, well, depende. May mga Korean movies na napanood ko lately, tsaka Japanese movies na based on
Mm.
Murakami stories. Tapos
Mm.
parang they took liberties with their adaptation of the story, pero okay pa rin. Parang if I think maganda if whoever decides to, like, oh my god, if I were if I had the fortune of that, then it would be great, no? Pero if yung ano gustong gumawa ng short movie or long movie or feature film about my any of my stories, if if they want, as long as they stay true to the spirit of the story,
Okay,
then
those.
yeah,
Mhm.
and if I get paid.
Oh, of course. Monica, I'd like to thank you for sharing your insights, your cuento. Personally, I feel inspired as a budding writer. Sabi mo nga, it doesn't matter what age. I am 67, so I think I will still be able to finish that book that I have been trying to write. No? Thank you for your inspiration. Thank you for writing the stories
Yeah.
of the Filipino diaspora.
Thank you
Thank you
po.
for being part of a creative force that hopefully would unify our country, would make society, the world, a better place to live in. So thank you very much, Monica. At
Thank
yeah,
you rin
and
po. Thank you for having me.
I'm so happy that we were able to have this korero, and I look forward to reading your novel, and I'm going to order a copy from Good Books, and I will just
Thank you.
I will put that mailing address in my brother-in-law's house in Johnsonville para libre yung ano,
Sige
libre
po, sige po.
yung postage.
Tapos ano, lipad na lang siya sa Auckland. Yung I'm not
Hindi,
sure if you'll yeah, I'm not sure if you'll include the link in your YouTube, or well, any if any,
I
you
will.
include it in
Oo.
any of your uploads. Pero anyway, nasa website ko po siya, yung Good Books tsaka Unity.
Mhm.
Tsaka
Yes,
it's
I
in
will
public
include that as
libraries. You don't, yeah, if you, kung kapos kayo sa pera, hindi naman sa ano, oo nga. Yun yung, that's what I love
yeah.
about public libraries. Ano sila,
Mm.
beacons of
Mhm.
democracy.
Yes. I don't know if you know of a bookstore dito. Yung pangalan niya is Hard to Find Books, no, dito sa
Mhm.
Auckland. So it's an old house. two stories na ano, punong-puno ng kung ano-anong mga libro na yung talagang hard to find kasi mga second hand na, may mga bago. Kaya ako gustong bumili kasi para pagdating mo dito, ay yun.
That's such an honor po. Siyempre they're like yung mga bigger online stores like Booktopia, Wheelers, they have it. Pero siyempre mas gusto ko talagang suportahan ng mga brick and mortar bookstores tsaka mga
Yes,
local businesses kasi
correct.
yeah. Because
Mhm.
they support my work too and they
Yes.
support the work of a lot of up and coming writers. So,
Mhm, mhm. Actually, there are two Filipina moms who opened like an online bookstore dito sa New Zealand, sa both in
mhm.
Auckland, but they're focusing on children's books, no? But syempre,
Mhm.
unti-unti children's books and then parang ano.
Nga po.
So
Kasi
thank you
yun
so much.
thank you rin po. Thank you po.
Yeah,
It's an honor.
you were saying, yeah, you were saying kasi ano.
Yeah, kasi ano eh, I'm not surprised that they're focusing on children's books kasi syempre itong
Ah,
mga new immigrant parents, they want to share their culture with their children, tapos they don't want their children to completely forget their roots. So children's books
mhm,
muna, tapos
yeah.
slowly build it
Yes,
up. And yeah,
yeah.
that's like a very welcome development.
All right. So, good night and thank you very much for
Thank you
everything,
po.
Monica. All the best.
Thank you
At
po, Direk.
yeah. At mga kabarangay, nakapanayan po natin, nakachikahan po natin si Monica Macansantos, direktamente mula sa Baguio. Thank you so much also sa ating mga listeners and viewers for allowing Monica and me to come into your homes, into your hearts for our program on PSTV 5 Plus. Magandang gabi po. Thank you and God bless.